I call upon the spirit of the owl, messenger of wisdom. Welcome to the Temple of the Owl. Merry meet, seekers of knowledge. I am Matt Sal, your host. Hope everyone's having a wonderful day out there. Sending you guys some good, positive vibes your way if you need them. I'll thank you guys for listening here at the Temple of the Owl. This is where we talk about magic and spirituality on all levels, but it's through the perspective of a modern witch. Temple of the Owl here in Northern California. And I want to thank you guys for listening on the Spotify and YouTube. Thank you for listening on Troubled Minds Radio Network, KUAP Digital Broadcasting. Also, check out templeoftheowl.com. All the episodes will be up there. Thank you guys for your support and listening. Well, today I wanted to change it up a little bit, do something different. We're going to be talking about not really necessarily like a witchy kind of books, but I wanted to talk about Zecharia Sitchin and talk about the ancient alien theories. Just something different to kind of change it up a little. But I really like these books. I do recommend to read them. So I'm going to talk about Zecharia Sitchin and his books and the ancient alien Anunnaki theory. So the Zecharia Sitchin, I came across these books. They're not, like I said, they're not really witchy, but I think they're important because they tell these stories, and these stories are just out of this world. And I like how he sets it up. Like, he doesn't really tell us what happened. He gives us the evidence that's available, and he asks us to just really think about it. And at the end of the day, it's, what do you believe? And I wanted to talk about it because these books, they're really good. I do recommend you read all 7 of the books in the series in order. And now, whether you believe it or not, just ask yourself, what do we know about our past? Now, Zecharia Sitchin was he was a writer and a researcher. He was best known for his controversial theories about ancient civilizations and the extraterrestrial influence on human history. Sitchin was born on July 11th, 1920, in what was then the Soviet Union. He was raised in what is now Israel. Now, growing up in the region rich with ancient history, he developed an early fascination with archaeology, with languages, and the origins of human civilization. He later studied history and economics in the London School of Economics, where he built the foundation in research and analysis, the skills that would later apply to his, what he was doing with his ancient texts. Now, Sitchin spent months of his life studying ancient writings from Mesopotamia, particularly the Sumerian cuneiform tablets. He proposed that these texts contain literal, historical accounts rather than symbolic myths. Now, his interpretations led him to develop a theory about these ancient gods, and they were actually these extraterrestrial beings known as the Anunnaki. Sitchin is most famous for suggesting that the Anunnaki came to Earth from a distant planet called Nibiru, and they were genetically engineered humans to serve as the workers. Now, ancient myths and religious stories are based on real encounters with these beings, and these ideas became central to what they all now call ancient astronaut theory. And his most influential work began with the 12th planet in 1976. Now, this is the first book in the Earth Chronicles series. This is the one I recommend you guys start off with. He has other titles. The next book, Stairway to Heaven, The Wars of Gods and Men, and different. There's like 7 books in the series. And these books gained a large following because it became, a major figure in just the alternative history and conspiracy theory communities. Mainstream historians and archaeologists strongly dispute his claims, but they all agree that the translations of an ancient language, they could be inaccurate. There's no real scientific evidence for the planet Nibiru, but these Anunnaki, they're mythological figures, and because of this, his work, it got classified as pseudoscience. Now, despite the criticism, Sitchin had a lasting cultural impact. His ideas influenced popular media, documentaries, and the rise of ancient aliens, these theories and the spiritual and alternative belief systems. He passed away in 2010, but his work continues to inspire curiosity and exploration into humanity's origins. Now, Zecharia Sitchin remains a polarizing figure. And some might see him as a pioneer of human history, but others, they kind of tell him as a storyteller who blurred the line between myth and fact. Regardless of where you stand, his work is powerful. It's not saying that it's truth, it's just something that we can just talk about. Now, the 12th Planet from 1976 is the first book in the Earth Chronicles series. He presents these bold, controversial theories about the origins of of humanity. Drawing from the ancient texts from Mesopotamia, he suggests that civilizations recorded real encounters with these advanced beings known as the Anunnaki. He claims they came from a distant planet called Nibiru. Now, according to the book, these beings visited Earth thousands of years ago, genetically engineered humans, and it became the foundation for what we later called gods. This sweeping reinterpretation of history that blends astrology, mythology, and cosmic speculation. At its heart, the 12th Planet challenges traditional narratives, and I think that's one of the reasons why I like it. Sitchin suggests that ancient myths are literal records. Now, not really in the book does he ever really say this, but a lot of people kind of took it that way, that he was trying to say this was the truth. I feel that he just gives us the evidence, and like I said, it's up to us to decide. But the creation of human evolution, makes you question these things and wonder what really happened in the past. He presents these ideas and these discoveries, and like I said, I think they're more like speculation. But he raises all these weird questions, like, ancient texts talking about these astronomical claims, the result of the narrative that feels both scholarly and imaginative. The book excels at making readers question what they think they know about history. It opens the door to curiosity and exploration. Even if you don't agree with the conclusions, the storytelling pulls you in. It reads like a mystery, uncovering hidden truths. The book has a massive influence on ancient alien theories and conspiracy culture, like a spiritual and awakening communities, and it helps shape an entire genre of alternative history. Now, scholars widely reject his translations, but these ancient languages, they say maybe they could have been lost in translation. Maybe they're not accurate, because there's no evidence for the planet Nibiru. There's no real evidence for this kind of stuff, but he presents it in a way that makes you want to think about it. It's kind of something different. It's less about proving that extraterrestrials are real. It's more about exploring like the myths and the symbolism, the nature of the gods. And it raises questions like exploring the myths. Are they actual beings? Were they energies? Were they archetypes? Do they, these creation stories repeat across cultures, which is really crazy to think about how, these same stories are told over and over again. And what is the relationship between myth and the truth? Now, for witches, these questions are just part of the path. And the 12th Planet is not scientifically supported account of ancient history, but it's a powerful in its cultural impact. It challenges and provokes, and it invites readers to think beyond controversial boundaries. Whether you see it as groundbreaking theory or modern myth, it succeeds in doing one thing very well. It makes you question reality. The true power of the book is not in the answers that it gives, but in the questions that it leaves behind. Because sometimes the path to understanding doesn't begin with certainty. It begins with curiosity. When we open the pages of The 12th Planet by Zecharia Sitchin, we are stepping into a world where history, myth, and cosmic speculation blur into one. This book is just, it's not just a theory. It has reimagining a human's origin story. And Sitchin proposes that the ancient gods of Mesopotamia, the Anunnaki, were not symbolic beings or deities of nature, but physical, advanced entities who came to Earth long ago. Now, to some, this is really radical, really, out there theory, but to others, it seems strangely familiar. Because in the path of witchcraft, you can already understand something important. Now, these stories of these gods, and they're not just stories. In the 12th planet, the gods are described as powerful, human-like, and they had emotions, and they were involved in human affairs. They argue, they create, they destroy, and they guide. And if you look across global pantheons, from the Greek to the Egyptian to the Norse, you'll notice something very similar. The gods behave like beings with personalities and power. Now, in witchcraft, especially like pagan traditions or polytheistic traditions, the deities are often understood in multiple ways. We talk about archetypes. They could be energetic forces, or they could be seen as spiritual intelligence, something that exists beyond human definition. So when Sitchin reads ancient texts, literally, he's doing something unusual, but not entirely foreign, if you think about it in magical thinking. Modern witchcraft teaches us that the gods are not distant. They are present. They are accessible. And they are part of a living relationship. Whether you work with Hecate, Odin, or any of these, an ancestral spirit, or whenever you work with these gods, you're engaging with forces that have been remembered and reinterpreted over time. Now, Sitchin's work raises interesting questions about the earliest stories of the gods and describes encounters with something real. But that reality was filtered through a human understanding. For witches, this opens a doorway, not to accept that history as truth, but to explore. Where did our gods come from? And how do we experience them today? One of the most powerful takeaways of the 12th planet is the idea that ancient texts might hold layers of meaning. I really like that. Even if we don't accept his conclusions, we can still ask ourselves, what were our ancestors trying to explain? Why did so many cultures describe beings in the sky? And why do these stories repeat across time? In witchcraft, myth is not dismissed. It is worked with. And the myth becomes the ritual symbol, the spell work, and it gives us personal transformation. So whether the Anunnaki are literal beings or mythological constructs, are misunderstood energies, they still hold power as symbols. And it's important to say that mainstream historians and they do not support his translations or his conclusions, and there's no scientific evidence, but it doesn't mean that the conversation has to end right there, because the value of these books are, especially to a witch, trying to understand all this, trying to learn as much as we can, it's not proving that it's true. It's what it awakens. And the 12th planet invites us, to look deeper and ask deeper questions like, are the gods like extraterrestrial beings? Are they reflections of something within us? Or are they something completely different? Now, in witchcraft, the answer is both. We work with the gods as energies and archetypes. We honor them in ritual. We feel them with intuition. And whether they come from the stars, the earth, or the human soul, their stories continue to shape our magic. Because in the end, the power of the gods is not just where they came from. It's how we remember them and how we work with them. How will we carry these stories forward? Now, this book is fascinating to me because, one of the things that really trips me out, makes me think about these as I'm reading these stories, is I realize that I've heard these stories before. All the stories from the Bible, from Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, from Sodom and Gomorrah, the Tower of Babel, Cain and Abel, David and Goliath, and the story of Noah and the flood. Now, these are some of the same stories, except for they were told in cuneiform text dating back thousands of years before the Bible was written and Christianity was, being told as a story. Now, here's my kind of review of the book. And the planet Nibiru orbits a distant star. Before the Earth was here, there was a planet called Tiamat. Now, Nibiru came through our orbit, and it had many moons orbiting it. And those moons slammed into Tiamat, and it created our Earth and our moon. And the rest of the planet's debris became the asteroid belt. And the Anunnaki who lived on planet Nibiru, they started going through an environmental crisis. Volcanoes erupting, the ozone was depleted, and the Anunnaki became desperate because the air was contaminated and their crops were being destroyed. They realized that releasing gold into the sky would help heal their planet's ozone and restore the order. But the gold was rare on their planet, and it was quickly depleted. Their only hope was to get gold from another planet. As Nibiru came back around to our solar system, our heroes, the Enki and Enlil, the brothers of their father Anu, they came to Earth in search of more gold to save their planet. They passed all the other planets and landed on Earth in the water. They had fish suits that they could swim to the shore. There they built the first establishment of Anunnaki, Eridu. And the Anunnaki built a spaceport and used the mountains as markers. They built pyramids to help guide the ships to the spaceport. They built territories on places like the Temple of Baalbek in Lebanon. They set out to find the gold. Now, back then, the gold on Earth was abundant, and it was everywhere. They collected the gold and sent it back to the planet Nibiru. And the plan worked, but they still needed more gold. The Anunnaki took to the mines. They mined for gold night and day, and they realized how hard and dangerous the mining was. So they needed help. They built these robot giants, called the Igigi, to mine the gold for them. But the Igigi quickly realized they were being manipulated, and they rose up and retaliated against the Anunnaki. In a huge battle, the Anunnaki won, but they wiped out the Igigi. It was then that Enki had an idea to make workers from the creatures that were already here on Earth. They took Neanderthal woman and began messing with her DNA, mixing it with Anunnaki DNA. The results were these hideous monsters, these abominations. Now, some of them they kept, but most of them they put out of their misery. Enki got another idea. He wanted to use his sister, Ninmah, And they used these intravertilization. They put Enki sperm and Ninmah's eggs in the place of the womb of the Neanderthal woman, and it created man. The first man was named Adam, like a molecule. They made several humans, and they lived in the Eden, a giant garden. And the Anunnaki began to take human women and mated with them, and this is where they created the Nephilim. And the last time that the planet Nibiru left our planet, the Anunnaki decided to abandon the project because there was not enough gold to return to Earth to sustain their planet. And they noticed that when Nibiru came close to Earth, it shook the Earth and it changed the planet as it moved across. They saw that there was these polar ice caps at the South Pole and that they were unstable. The next time the planet came around, they knew that the ice caps would fall into the ocean, causing floods and tidal waves, the deluge, and everything on Earth would be underwater. The Anunnaki, they were going to let the humans die in the deluge, but Enki interfered behind their back. He told the one human to build a craft and save as much flora and fauna as he could. The flood wiped out the Nephilim, but the craft survived the catastrophe. After the Anunnaki found out that the humans survived, they helped us rebuild. Several wars broke out over supremacy and the control of Earth, and tyrants began to rise. And the way they fought back was the use of nuclear weapons. Cities like Sodom and Gomorrah were destroyed by nuclear blasts. And those are now the ancient ruins of these ancient cities. Now, this is just my kind of breakdown of the books, but there's a lot more stories in there, and I think it makes me think about things. It makes me question things. It makes me have these ideas, these questions about what happened to our ancient past, and how much do we know about our ancient history? How much do we know about where we came from? Well, I want to know what you guys think. Do you guys like these books? Have you guys heard of these theories? What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. Thank you guys for listening on the Temple of the Owl. This is Matt's Owl. Thank you for listening on KUAP Digital Broadcasting, the Troubled Minds Radio Network. And guys, check out templeoftheowl.com. We got more episodes coming out every Monday at 7 p.m. Pacific time. And just thank you guys for listening. Thank you for your support. Have a good day. Blessed be.
For many centuries, witchcraft has been considered evil, associated with the devil and all things dark. Let's break these stereotypes with your host, Matt Sal, at the Temple of the Owl. Let's talk about magic, of the old ways, explore the many roles of the witch, learn the tools of the craft, the history of the science behind this ancient, earth-based religion on the Troubled Minds Radio Network.